So the dust seems to have settled surrounding Anthony Joshua's fight against Robert Helenius from the weekend. And there's something I want to address. It's something I've observed in the comments of my video, as well as the videos and posts of other channels. And there's just a minority, a considerable minority, but a minority nevertheless, of people who just can't seem to wrap their head around and accept the criticism that myself and others are leveraging AJ's performance. And there seems to be a common theme amongst these people, and that is, but AJ won. That seems to be the theme, the quote that you can extrapolate from all of their comments. And I think these people are very short-sighted. And now, from what I've seen, it's mostly respectful, so this is not a diss video or anything. I'm not interested in that. I'm just kind of providing my counter argument. But these people seem to be very short-sighted because yes, Anthony Joshua did get the win. And yes, he did secure a 7th round highlight reel stoppage. One punch. Fantastic. However, those 7 rounds weren't particularly easy. He had to eat a fair amount of punches before he was able to secure that. At times, he looked shell-shocked. And I think that's the best way to describe Anthony Joshua, is shell-shocked. He looked like a guy who was timid. He looked like he was trying to think of every move before he made it. Clearly dealing with paralysis by analysis. Not wanting to make a mistake. Not willing to grab the bull by the horns and stick it on his opponent. And who was that opponent? It was Robert Helenius. A fighter with ability. You know, he's not completely useless. I've said that recently in the build-up to this fight. However, Helenius is vulnerable. And he's jaded. And he's been cleaned out plenty of times in his career in this kind of fashion. And on top of that, one of those times was recently. We only have to cast our minds back to October, 10 months ago, when he got absolutely starched by Deontay Wilder. And speaking of Wilder, Anthony Joshua is supposedly lined up to fight him next. Now, that's just penciled in. It's not necessarily a concrete plan, but his team, all this talk surrounding the Deontay Wilder fight, that's all we heard this week. This is a must-win for AJ. He's got to get through Robert Helenius because there's this big Deontay Wilder clash, December and January. So they've talked that fight up. There's a certain expectation now from the boxing public, which puts Anthony Joshua in a very difficult position, should he not feel he's ready to take on Deontay Wilder. This is the context that myself and others are factoring in when we criticise AJ. Because yeah, we could say, oh, that's it. You know, he got the W, that's the most important point. Roll on Deontay Wilder. AJ's got a 7th round knockout under his belt, just what he needed. Well, yeah, just what he needed. However, how is that performance against Robert Helenius, someone who's levels below Anthony Joshua, how will that impact his confidence? These are serious questions because when I'm critiquing AJ and his performance, it factors in the context around it. Who was he fighting against? Who is he fighting next, potentially? And all of a sudden, you factor in that context and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is such a good result after all. Because in that fight, as I say, AJ's clearly still dealing with his demons. There's still a mental battle there. He's having to... It's almost like he's having to convince himself that he can do it. Otherwise, he can't pull the trigger. And you cannot be like that in front of someone like Deontay Wilder. Now, Deontay Wilder 100% has his limitations, both as a fighter and a person, believe me. And, you know, you can critique Deontay Wilder and how he's conducted himself in his career. He's been a protected champion. That's without a shadow of a doubt. However, Deontay Wilder is an animal. He's a killer. If he smells any kind of fear or even uncertainty, he will stick it on you. And Deontay Wilder, for all his faults, he's a massive puncher and he's got a massive heart. We saw Tyson Fury have to nail Deontay Wilder to the canvas to get the win, especially in the third fight. So Deontay Wilder is not the kind of fighter that you can afford to go in the ring with and not be 100% mentally, because he'll smell that and he'll come after you. And stylistically, just being honest here, I've never really liked AJ's chances against Deontay Wilder. Don't get me wrong, he could beat Wilder. However, stylistically, I just don't think it's a favourable matchup for AJ. But that aside, Anthony Joshua is a fighter who I do admire. In my opinion, Anthony Joshua really had an exemplary run as heavyweight champion because he was willing to fight the best available competition when he was champion, as a champion should. And I know people dispute that. I know there's another camp of people who are convinced that in 2018, 2019, Anthony Joshua was avoiding Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, which is just simply not true. You can go back to that time and find articles, and it's public knowledge that deals with stupid amounts of money were made to both of those guys, respectively. And for whatever reason, they turned them down. But yet Anthony Joshua gets the blame. And now that doesn't necessarily define Anthony Joshua's ability. It doesn't mean that he beats both of those guys. They could have ducked him, but they still beat him once they step in the ring. I don't know. I'd like to find out. But what I'm trying to say is Anthony Joshua is a fighter who I do credit. When Anthony Joshua does stuff that deserves credit, I'll give it to him. But at the same time, if he does something that I feel deserves criticism, criticize him. It's a simple concept. And, you know, to any of you listening to this video, if you can't understand that concept, I don't think this is the channel for you, because this is not a fanboy channel, but at the same time, this is not a hate channel. This is simply my observations, and I'm trying to keep it as objective and unbiased as possible, because ultimately, these fighters I watch for entertainment. I'm not their friends. It's that simple. Don't really care to be their friends. It's just boxing. But, you know, without getting down a rabbit hole, just to sum this up, Anthony Joshua is very much on the rehabilitation pathway, and that's what he needs. That's why I never gave AJ stick for fighting Franklin in April. I said, yeah, bring it on. Good fight, the kind of fight he needs. Same thing with Dillian Whyte. And then the same thing with Robert Helenius. I wasn't one of these guys tearing him down. So, oh, it just goes to show AJ's only interested in taking the easy route back, blah, 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 blah. He needs rehabilitation fights. However, you're talking about going into a Deontay Wilder fight after that kind of performance, poor performance against Robert Helenius. It's just not good enough. Simple as that. So look, I feel like I've got my point across, my counter argument. Ultimately, the people saying this, oh, but AJ won, they don't see the bigger picture. But hopefully this video opens your eyes up to that, and you can see that there's a lot more you have to factor in before you just kind of brush this off and say, oh, you know what, AJ, he sealed the deal, got the knockout, bring on Deontay Wilder. Nah, if Anthony Joshua fights Deontay Wilder next, as far as I'm concerned, that's a cash out. And he might still win. He could go in there, December, January, spark Deontay Wilder out, happy days. And I'd give credit to him if he did that, because I'm not anticipating that happening. However, we look at the law of averages, percentage chances. I don't think Anthony Joshua's got a very good chance of beating Deontay Wilder in December or January. And I think he knows that deep down, because he does seem to be a little bit apprehensive to really talk about Deontay Wilder. As I pointed out in my post-fight video, in the ring he kind of laughed it off and he didn't give a definitive answer. But then you factor in that Eddie Hearn seems to be all systems go. He's like, oh yeah, Deontay Wilder in December, January, let's go, bring it on, that's next. Whereas AJ, I don't think he wants that. And it's a shame because, as I say, people are then going to look at that and say, oh, this proves Anthony Joshua was ducking Deontay Wilder all along. Should he swerve that Deontay Wilder fight? And that's just not the case. That's quite a big misrepresentation But ultimately, you know, we just have to see what happens next. But that's not good enough, in my opinion, to go into a Deontay Wilder fight next and have a good chance of winning. And I suspect that Joshua knows that. I suspect he feels that. But look, anyway, that's my thoughts on the kind of aftermath, and in particular what those people have been saying. The anti-Joshua critique squad. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.